I'm not surprised by this. I always thought that this was a massive overreach of his authority. And I'd actually be quite surprised if one of the appeals courts overruled the Court of International Trade, given how strong the case is that Trump has overstepped his authority here.
Hi, I'm Maddie, Hale, and welcome to the Trump Report. Today we've had Henry Olsen on the show. He's a senior fellow at the Ethics of Public Policy in Washington, D.C. We've spoken to him about this court ruling, tariffs no more for Donald Trump, the fact that this big Liberation Day, was it all for nothing, or will it actually go ahead if he gets Congress on board? So we speak to him all about that and what this means for other countries. Are they excited? Did some companies get paid back for the tax on tariffs? We also speak to him about Elon Musk. He's out of the White House. What does this mean? And these two still friends? So all that today on the Trump Report. You can watch us every day, Monday through Friday, on Times Radio's YouTube. Henry Olsen, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a big day, but a bad day for Donald Trump. We've obviously seen the fact that the United States Court of International Trade has struck down his tariffs, his April 2nd tariffs, where dozens of countries were having tariffs invoked on them. This would basically, what they've said is that Trump's justification for invoking all of these tariffs on Liberation Day was not a national emergency the way he said it was. The three-judge panel, it was a unanimous ruling. They said it was a victory for families, small businesses, and everyday Americans. They called it unlawful, reckless, and economically devastating. So can you walk me through what's happened here?
Yeah, what's happened here is that under the American system, the president does not have the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs. That is something that was given to Congress. Under our constitutional law, Congress can delegate that power, but needs to do so by an explicit law with a clear limiting feature. And the court ruled that they had not done that, that the justifications that Trump employed were either based on laws that didn't give him tariff setting authority, or he invoked emergencies that weren't really emergencies, like the trade deficit is not a sudden and unexpected event, which is what the word emergency was meant to mean. And that the laws that he justified didn't give him tariff setting authority anyway. So what the court said was, constitutionally, you're out of your bounds, you're out of your lane, back to Congress to see if Congress wants to do what you asked them to do.
So in layman's terms, the court has asked him to justify why he's invoking these tariffs. He said it was a national emergency. They said that he didn't have the right to do that. It was abuse of power, and the fact that he didn't work with Congress in working with Congress to instate why they needed these tariffs.
Right, that this is a congressional power. You know, it would be as if in Britain, the prime minister said, well, we're going to do X, but never got parliamentary authority for it. Obviously, that wouldn't fly under your system. That's the effective system that happened here, is that Congress did not give him that authority. They had not passed a law, so he could not make that declaration.
Is that the way Donald Trump operates, Henry? Is he kind of a rules for thee and rules for me and that kind of leader?
You know, Trump never had to deal with public stockholders. Trump had a privately held corporation where he could make whatever decisions he wanted to and hire and fire the people to execute that decision. And in this term, that's the way he's treating the presidency is, hey, I'm the head of the privately held corporation called the United States of America. You elected a CEO. And what he's finding is that a lot of the things he wants to do, he doesn't have the legal authority to do. He's losing in court on a whole bunch of things. I'm not surprised by this. I always thought that this was a massive overreach of his authority. And I'd actually be quite surprised if one of the appeals courts overruled the Court of International Trade, given how strong the case is that Trump has overstepped his authority here.
And we know the Trump administration has already filed a notice of appeal, which would then lead it up to the Supreme Court to make the final decision over whether these tariffs will go ahead or whether they'll end. So what do you think will happen there? Will the Supreme Court be in his favor or not?
No, I think the Supreme Court is going to rule against him. I think it could very well be a unanimous decision that the three liberals will rule that he overstepped his power. The six conservatives disagree on a lot of things, but they are united on the idea that the presidency has assumed too much power over Congress in the last 50 to 100 years. And I'd be surprised if at least 2 of the 6 conservatives didn't join with the liberals, and I would expect at least 4 and maybe all 6. I could very well see a 9-0 ruling on this, slapping down the president.
So, Henry, you do not see these tariffs in any way coming to fruition?
Not through executive action. What he'll have to do is get Congress to agree. That's going to be a very tough road because so many in Congress are philosophically opposed to tariffs, and also represent people who will be hurt by the tariffs. You know what Trump essentially is doing, saying you'll have short-term pain for long-term gain. Well, members of Congress tend to go for short-term gain and long-term pain. But on the other hand, Trump is the most powerful politically Republican president we've had in 50 years. If he goes to Congress and says, I want one thing from you, I want the power, Republicans in Congress, to give me the ability to negotiate trade deals to stop what's been going on for the last 40 years, they'll be stuck between Scylla and Charybdis, is that they don't want to give him that power. But on the other hand, if he makes it his signature issue, his voters will expect the Republicans in Congress to follow suit, and he could very well get it, but he cannot get it through his own unilateral action.
But is that more so because he might feel embarrassed about the fact that he made this massive song and dance about Liberation Day, and it's been, the first hurdle, it's been shot down? Is this, and he kind of use that as ammunition almost to strong arm his members of parliament Congress into voting in his favor? Because is this not embarrassing for him?
Well, Donald Trump doesn't seem to feel embarrassed. It is certainly embarrassing for objective viewers, but he has wanted tariffs and to end the trade deficit all of his life. I think it is the single most thing he cares about aside from immigration. And I think he's going to go to Congress at some point and say, this is what I ran on. I can't bring America back unless I get manufacturing, production back. I can't do it without trade authority to do this, and I need tariffs as the leverage. Give it to me because this is my signature issue. I think at some point, he's going to go to Congress, whether it's now during the reconciliation or next year after the appeals process has run out. At some point, he's going to go to Congress and say, you're Republicans, give me the thing I care most about.
But on that note, Henry, Trump's been elected on 2 occasions, mostly because of the way he is about the economy. The Republican Party have really traded themselves on being the ones that can handle an economy. They can make Americans richer. He understands investment. He understands trade. He understands business. But what do you think this will do to his reputation, especially because most polls are indicating that Americans have lost confidence in Donald Trump when it comes to the economy?
Yeah, the marginal voter, the person who's not a Trump fanatic but is willing to vote for him, now doesn't have the confidence in him on the economy. I think part of that is the tariffs, but most of it is because of the chaos surrounding the tariffs, which is, are they on, are they off, are they up, are they down? And I think if Trump were to go and say, this is what I want, and be more stable about it, and go to Republicans, his favorability rating among Republicans is still astronomical. His favorability overall is actually fairly decent for a modern presidency. And I think if that still is the case when he's decided to go to Congress, I think it'll be very hard for Republicans to tell him no, given that they would all face, or many of them would face, primary challenges from Trump acolytes if they did tell him no.
Do you consider the court ruling a slap on the wrist to Donald Trump, Henry?
Oh, it's more like a 2x4 in the face. That this is his signature issue, and they told him no. They told him no directly and in no uncertain terms. And again, this is something, I was a lawyer at one point. I'm familiar with constitutional law. As soon as he did this, my thought was, these things are going to get struck down. He doesn't have the authority. This is his version of what Joe Biden tried to do during his term, using a law that was passed to help first responders after 9/11 to cancel $1.3 trillion in student loan debt. The Supreme Court said, no, there's nothing in this law that says you can basically appropriate 5% of the American economy without congressional approval. And I think that's why what you'll do is you'll see the conservative justices who said no to Biden will say no to Trump to be intellectually consistent. He'll be furious. He'll say this is the courts hijacking the agenda. Well, it's something, a little thing called the Constitution.
Yeah, but do you think it's the US International Trade, Court of International Trade saying, look, you're not above the law?
Yes, that's exactly what it is saying you're not above the law. Is again, our system is based on the idea of delegated powers that the people, when they formed the Constitution, gave Congress certain powers, they gave the president certain powers, and we don't have a dependent executive who can basically exercise the authority of king in parliament with the support of a majority in parliament. It's much more complex than that. And what they're saying is the people haven't given you that power. They gave it to something else, some other group. They gave it to Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. If you want to do this, get their approval because they're the ones who have the power to do it. And I think I think the courts are absolutely right to do that.
So the only way that this will pass Congress, Henry, is the fact that Donald Trump will strong arm his Republican Party into doing it. He'll threaten certain things. He won't go out and campaign for them at the midterm elections. Their entire career hangs in the balance of this one tariff, this one liberation day.
Yeah, well, if they want to be liberated from his anger, they have to give him what he wants. He hasn't done that yet. Obviously, we're talking. But eventually, I think he's going to find that the courts will uphold this decision. I suspect there's not going to be the dissenting judge or justice along the way. It is so clear. When Donald Trump's patience with the judicial system runs out, he either gives up or he goes to Congress. It's one or the other. And my guess is he goes to Congress, and that's when the threats start coming. And, he could say, if you don't do this, I'll support a primary challenger to you. Remember is that in America, the parties don't select the candidates, the voters do. So it's not like where you would go to your local Labor Party or conservative association and they could deselect you, which almost never happens. Tens of thousands of ordinary voters who get television ads and direct text messages make that decision. And Donald Trump has already over $700 million in his personal bank account, he can go after any of these guys if he's got a credible candidate. They don't want that.
One of the main things to come out of Liberation Day was the kind of backtracking from Donald Trump. He used it as such a threat on countries that he felt weren't in proper, fair trade deals with the United States. And that worked in the sense that they obviously panicked. They came to the table and said, look, let's negotiate a proper deal to be fair for both countries. So what that has meant is that Donald Trump has put this pause on these tariffs while they enter into these negotiations with a number of countries. So the pause would be up on July 9th. Which would mean these tariffs do come into effect if a deal isn't struck between the United States and the various countries that they're dealing with. So basically this means that the court ruling has meant that this pause will be permanent for now. So how do you think these countries are feeling, Henry?
Relieved that suddenly the big club that Donald Trump said he was going to wield if they didn't come to the table has been taken away from him. And I think Trump is going to be furious. And from his perspective, rightfully so. But on the other hand, he should never have done this in this manner to begin with. He should have made it his signature legislative initiative and asked Congress for it back in March, and and made it less of an executive assertion of power and much more of a deliberate view of the American people. And so I expect that some of these countries will want to reach agreements simply because they want to hedge their bets against it happening again. But others are just going to say, well, until you have that power, we're going to talk about other things because we're not afraid of you anymore.
Part of the ruling was that the government might have to pay back these duties it's already collected. You mentioned it was to me before that it was billions of dollars already. Anybody who had to pay tariffs so far will be able to get them refunded. So that means that does that mean that the average American who's paid a tax on these tariffs will get their money back?
Alas, no, because the people who actually paid the tariff were the importing companies. Whoever imports the good paid the tariff. They get the money back. If they passed it along to the consumer, through retailers and through middlemen and so forth, each one of those may have in effect paid the tariff, but the legal entity that paid the tariff was the importing company. They will get the money back. And the smarter ones might want to offer tariff rebates. You bought a coat from us during this year. Come and buy two more coats, and the second one is free as a tariff rebate. They'll come up with clever marketing things, but no, the importing companies are the ones who will get the money back, not the taxpayer.
I have a feeling that these companies won't be passing it on to the consumer, Henry.
Well, maybe not.
I have a feeling they'll take the money and run, but let's move on to the other big story of the day, which is, of course, Elon Musk. His time in the White House is up. His 130 days as a short-term employee is over. He wrote a tweet saying, as my scheduled time as a special government employee comes to an end, I would like to thank President Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. The Doge mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government. Now, what was your reaction to this bromance no longer?
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised. Is that what you had was two very strong men who are used to running closely held companies in a direct way. Very talented men. Let's not at all put an aspersion on their abilities. But first and foremost, Donald Trump is now a politician. He's not a businessman. And first and foremost, Elon Musk is a businessman. Essentially, the Tesla stock ran up in value after the election, and then it ran down a lot once his fealty to Donald Trump became clear. And the Tesla board essentially said, you're going to have to choose. What do you want to do? You want to run the company, or do you want to help Donald Trump? And he decided he wanted to run the company. So I'm not at all surprised about this. But the fact is, Doge is still there. There's a lot of people in the administration that believe in that, and I suspect it'll be in some ways more effective, even if much less lower profile, because it won't be at the whims of a politically unexperienced, talented businessman, but it will be responding to much more politically sensitive and bureaucratically adept people in the White House. I suspect it'll continue to have long-reaching influence.
There's obviously been so much speculation, Henry, whether there was a fight brewing or whatever. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have obviously denied that. We've seen that we haven't seen the two of them together a lot, but we know that Elon Musk did join him on his Middle East tour the other week. But and Elon Musk says, look, the 130 days is up, that plain and simple. But of course, who knows? The other thing on that note is that Elon Musk, he went on CBS and he spoke about this big, beautiful bill that Donald Trump has just passed. He said he was disappointed to see the massive spending bill was passed because it increases the budget deficit and doesn't decrease it. So this is Elon Musk's entire role, was trying to decrease the federal deficit. He wanted to slash $2 to $3 trillion off it. So he's just gone against, to criticize the fact that Donald Trump's, passed his big, beautiful bill was an interesting way to, have a send-off from the White House. So I wonder what your thoughts are. Were there cracks forming between these two? Was it too many egos in the room?
I think if one of these people is in the room, there's too many egos in the room. You put two of them in the room, there's squared egos in the room. No, I think what it is I always thought that this was going to come to an end because it was in both people's interest for it to come to an end. That Elon Musk needs to run his business. Donald Trump needs to be the sole superstar of his own presidential TV reality show. I think they're on very good terms. I think Elon will be pleasantly surprised that there will be a number of bills that are put before Congress in the next month that do try and save money through the Doge reforms. As the director of management and budget said yesterday, that the Doge cuts can't go in the reconciliation bill by law. They have to go in separate bills. So the what are called rescission bills, which will be asking Congress to ratify and extend the Doge cuts, are going to start going before Congress. Those will save money and help cut the deficit. But it's going to be done in a different legislative platform. And this is one of the things where the fact that Elon is politically unsophisticated, unexperienced, means he may not have known that, hey, my turn at bat is afterwards. I'm not the leadoff hitter, I'm the cleanup hitter. That's a baseball analogy. Not sure what the appropriate cricket analogy would be.
I don't think either analogy is relevant to me, given that given that I'm not partaking in either of them. Although I do enjoy watching the Ashes with a beer in hand, Henry. But just to finish off for you, we've obviously seen these war of words between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. We've seen the tide finally start to turn in favor of Ukraine. Well, I guess not so much in favor, but more so just against Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump's remarks yesterday to reporters, he said, we'll find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it will take about a week and a half to 2 weeks. They seem to want to do something, but until the document is signed, I can't tell you, nobody can. I can say this, I'm very disappointed in what happened a couple of nights ago. Now, people were killed in the middle of what you would call a negotiation. What happens in 2 weeks? Because I think it's become quite clear that Vladimir Putin has no intention of negotiating. And I wonder why this Donald Trump keeps saying that he's wondering if Putin is tapping him along, because it's quite clear to everyone else that he is.
Yeah, the thing with Trump is he never admits a mistake. Most politicians don't admit mistakes, to be fair, but Donald Trump particularly doesn't admit to making mistakes. I think what he is hoping against hope is that Putin is going to change his mind. So he's giving Putin one last chance to redeem himself. I think everyone in the world who follows this would be amazed and shocked if Putin did. So then what Trump will do is, in his, probably with rhetoric of regret, do a lot of things that Putin won't like. I think one of the things that he would perhaps try to do would be seize Russian assets. I think one of the things that he might try to do is have secondary sanctions, which is to say, if a country like India, which has been buying a lot of cut rate Russian oil, does that, they'll be hit with sanctions. That's what Biden never did, which gave Putin a workaround. If you can't sell oil at $70 a barrel anymore to Germany, but you can sell it at $45 a barrel to India. Well, of course, that's a great deal for India. They got cut rate oil, but it's a great deal for Putin because he gets money to fuel the war machine. If Trump is willing to go in that direction, that shuts off the spigot of cash that is fueling Russia. And that could very well be what they're working on, is the legality and the extent of that, because obviously that has repercussions with our bilateral relations with India, who we want to have as very good friends. So there's a whole lot of complexities that go along with it. But Trump is basically signaling to Putin, you've got 10 to 14 days to do something in the vein that I want, in a serious and comprehensive way. And if you don't, well, sorry, Vlad, it's been fun, it's been real, but it hasn't been real fun. Here's what I'm going to do to hurt you.
Well, we hope that happens, and we hope that they are just going through the legalities of it. Henry Olsen, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Thank you for having me.